What up? It's at St. Laurent 57, sober, celibate, and saved. Um, so I just got back a little bit ago from a NA meeting that I always go to every Saturday night. Try to bring some of the ladies here with me. And I really needed that meeting. For anybody who, lives, with addiction, anyone who's looking to get into recovery, anyone who's suffered from addiction, anyone who's sober, trying to stay sober, I highly suggest you get to a meeting. I was in my head earlier, kind of just like going over some situations, and it brought up some like hurt feelings, right? And just like I had to remind myself what my SUD counselor always tells me, that you can't expect healthy behavior from unhealthy people. And I just have to remember to pray for those people, pray for them, and change me, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm only in control of myself. And at the end of the day, all I can do is work on myself. I have to continue to look inward instead of outward, right? Because at the end of the day, like, other people's actions and other people's morals and values and other people's, you know what I'm saying? Like, I have no control over that, and I shouldn't be judgmental, because I'm sure there are some of my actions or my ways that don't sit well with other people, right? But I really needed this meeting tonight, because even though I reminded myself of what my SUD counselor always tells me, the chairperson who spoke at the meeting, like, I really was able to identify a lot with what he was saying, you know what I mean? And, it's just like I always say, like, it helped me actually process a lot of things. This looking inward is like forever, like it's a forever process, right? Especially when I've spent, 34 and a half years in the same mentality. I may have been growing, I may have been maturing, and I may have been moving a little bit different, but inevitably there were so many hurt feelings stuffed deep down inside. He was telling his story and what NA does for him, and I really was able to, like, and he talked about how, like, no matter what, like, there are just some things. Anyways, I'll get to that, but it helped me realize that, because he did say something about how the one thing is, you got to take it 1 minute at a time, one day at a time, and you really don't need much to start. Like, you don't need anything other than, just like the reading says, the only thing that, the only requirement is the desire to get clean. You know what I'm saying? The desire to recover, the desire to change, the desire to live a better life. And that's what a lot of NA is about, the steps and the principles and the concepts. It's all about just, like, looking inward, right? Like, what behaviors keep coming up for you that keep producing the same actions, or the same consequences, the same actions, the same, cycle of insanity, as I always say, right? And, I was thinking to myself, because sometimes I just want to go right back into it. I want to go right back into the 9 to 5. I want to go right back into, taking my kids to school and making them breakfast and doing their snack and being with them and having them a part of my everyday life. Like, I just want to go back to that, right? And, the one thing I realized is, like, I just was so burnt out. And it's not from my kids, like, it's from life, just in general, like, the ever mounting priorities and responsibilities and the weight of carrying that on my own, and just putting priorities and responsibilities on top of, like, so much, like, a very unhealthy, very broken foundation, right? Like, nothing can last if your foundation is broken. And my foundation was most definitely broken. Like, I could persevere through a lot of things, and I can, make things work, but not without hanging on by a thread. Like my whole life, I think I've just been hanging on by a thread, you know. And so one thing today, while he was speaking, I realized like loneliness is really what allowed me. Loneliness is a huge part of why I started using. Um, and sometimes like you got to keep going through the process, you got to keep digging, and it's hard to admit loneliness, right? Because I'm not really a person who needs people. um, I just, people happen to gravitate towards me, and I'm good, in the community, and I'm good in, whatever. But like just the never ending, the inevitable situation of loneliness. Like growing up, I felt lonely because I didn't feel like I belonged, right? And then, as life, and you have friends, and like when you're a kid, so much of, especially if you have a broken home, right? You hate being home. So much of your life is put into your friendships. And then like when my friends would grow and we'd grow apart, or there might be something that, you know, like I internalized an action of theirs and it just hurt a friendship. Like I just, you know what I'm saying? Like that stuff was really hard. But really, like, what's really hard is just feeling lonely in the home, um, and just not having love like that. Like, just like sincerely wanting, to fill that void of not feeling loved, not being loved. How come it is that everybody else can get somebody to stay, or somebody is always looking at somebody else, and no matter what that person does, that I feel like would be just like so destructive to a relationship, and so like disloyal and disrespectful. But how is it that those people get somebody to stay? And why is it that no one wants to, like, no one is looking to do that for me? And so this feeling of loneliness, like the emptiness, the loneliness, is, I realized today, is a huge part of what took me back out into my addiction a few times. If not every time I re-entered addiction, it was most definitely to fill a void of loneliness, and to try to fill that void and not feel lonely, and to distract myself. Because also something I thought to myself is like, man, it sucks that the world makes women feel like they have to be desirable to every single person. Like the world makes you think like you got to be that woman that other women look at, and can be envious of. Or the world makes you feel like, you got to be that woman that all the men break their neck for. You know what I'm saying? And just to be desirable, and that's such a like heavy weight to carry as a woman. You know what I'm saying? Because that's not healthy, that's not realistic, and that's not what real life is about. But that's most definitely what society and social media and unhealthy relationships make us feel. You know what I'm saying? It makes us feel like we, you know what I'm saying? Like the attention has to be on us. Like we are only adequate, we're only worthy if everyone's attention is on us. And so the mixture of like just, being in a relationship and doing all of the things that I would think, you know, you're supposed to do in a relationship. But then I'm in relationships with unhealthy people. I'm in relationships with broken people. I'm in relationships that I didn't meet. Like, I didn't meet people who had the same morals and values. Like, I didn't meet people in like a healthy place. Like, I met people and attached myself and created a relationship out of like what my need was in that moment. And you know what I'm saying? Instead of me being, whole and giving things time, like that's also like the constant cycle. It's just on the go, constantly on the go, in my mind, in my life, like never catching a breath, never taking a break. And when he said what he said about like just doing things that are manageable, right? Because everything else will fall in place. But if you just try to throw yourself right back out there, it's the same thing that if I were to re-enter addiction right now, I would go right back to the last place I was. And I mean, I can't imagine what that bottom would look like, because life goes on and things fall apart. Because as long as you're alive and you're the one burying people, you know what I'm saying? People, like, death is upon everything, not just people, but situations and relationships. And as long as you're alive, things are going to come to an end. You know, the only way to avoid that is to not be here anymore, right? And so I just really needed that meeting. I really needed it because, like, sometimes it's hard because, like, my mind is set to go right back into this role. But then it's like, because of course I can make things work, but what is the repercussion for putting myself into a situation that's inevitably going to burn me out, right? Until I can gather all the things I need to set myself up for success, it's inevitable that burnout will happen again. And then what will happen? You know what I'm saying? Because at this point, if I go right back into it, and now where my world was and where the people, you know, who, whether attached or not, who are in my world, like, and just all these circumstances, like my relationship with my kids and all that stuff, like, how much worse would that look if I burn out and I get lonely and I don't have recovery, and if I don't go to a meeting, and if I don't, you know what I'm saying, if I don't reach out for help. Because that's also something I didn't have. I grew up where things were conditional. So it was really hard to ask for help because I felt like every time I asked for help, it was like transactional, right? So it was like if I was going to ask for help, then it was going to be, I was going to owe somebody something, or if I didn't feel like I could pay somebody back, you know what I'm saying, I just wouldn't feel adequate to ask for help. But also, I didn't have much of a community because I also feel like it's a burden. Like, I don't want to be a burden on somebody. I know everybody has responsibilities and priorities, and money is tight, and schedules are all over the place, and then you got, you know what I'm saying? So, and then, you know, when the people that I have, like the last resort people, are just not even people that I fully trust or like, you know what I mean? Or like they're a last resort for a reason. And so then, you know, it's really difficult because either I can't ask for help because it's transactional, or because I make it feel transactional, I'm always going to feel indebted, and I don't know if I'll be able to commit to that debt. And I don't want to be in that predicament where I feel like somebody felt used, or I feel like I owe somebody something. I don't want to have, like, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to have like a debt with anybody. But then also it's like, because actions are always conditional, it's like, well, if I ask this person, what do I have to do? Like, what does that mean? What are they going to want from me? You know? And so it's really good to be where I'm at. And sometimes it's hard because I can't understand why other people don't recognize certain things, but that's not my problem. Just like, for example, I don't care if people don't like me. I don't care if people talk shit about me. It's literally none of my business until you make it my business, because everybody's going to have an opinion, and I can't micromanage anybody's opinion, and nor do I care to. You know what I'm saying? So unless they come to me, there's nothing I can do with that, because everyone's going to have their opinion, and I don't need to be liked by everybody, and not everybody needs to understand me. And as long as I know that I'm in my right mind and I'm doing the right things, then that opinion it's none of my business, you know? Because I have opinions and judgments too, you know, and but that's what is really great about NA, in my domestic violence class, and cognitive behavioral therapy, and support groups and Celebrate Recovery, is the only way to be successful and the only way to recover is to focus on inward instead of outward. It's so easy to look at other people's situations or other people's actions and be like, well, I think they should do this, or why don't they do, you know? And that's just distracting yourself from removing your personal feelings about somebody else, because that's just a waste of time. It's unproductive. And so, yeah, like I highly suggest anyone who seriously struggles, and you know what? It's crazy because some people can just do these activities and it doesn't impair their life. And I would most definitely say I was most definitely a functioning addict for a very long time, but inevitably things did start to fall off. You know what I'm saying? Especially because my addiction shows up because I'm fucking lonely. I'm fucking want somebody to love me. I want someone to build with me. Like, I want my forever person, and I don't understand why it's so difficult or why people enter relationships and can't hold up their end of the bargain. Like, but at the same time, it's like he had mentioned something about how like somebody cheated on him in an unhealthy state of mind. He was sober, but in an unhealthy state of mind, he acted out in a way that it brought up an unhealthy memory, and he never wanted to be that. And now today, being in recovery and sobriety, like if someone were to cheat on him, he would just be like, well, that's your fucking loss. Like there's, you know what I'm saying? Instead of making it about you, it's always about them. When someone can't commit, it's inevitably on them, because otherwise you would just leave. Like there's always just unhealthy behaviors that can manifest, right? Because relationships are really hard. Like I've never been in a room, the topic was love too, and I've never been in a room where I think it's because I didn't grow up with my father, and I didn't grow up with my brothers either. You know what I'm saying? And I had a lot of guy friends, but it's just not something that ever got to really come up. Like, a couple times people said like they can't even say the word I love you, and a lot of the guys talk about how they have all these feelings but they can't communicate, so it just comes out in anger. And that's something I can see that has come up in like the men that I have been with in my life, and it does help me relinquish that pain. Like it does help me heal from the pain I felt of like why someone did A, B, C, and D. But at the same time, there are situations where I'm like, that wasn't meant to be anyway. But in that moment, when you're dedicated to that person, and like you can't understand, like, why are you not meeting my need? Like, why are you not? But that's just because that's not who they are. And if I wasn't in a healthy space when I met them, you know what I'm saying? Then I would have not stayed. But also, like, that's why you just have to give relationships time. And it's not like, and that's the problem, is like and it works for some people, which is great, right? But a lot of times you meet somebody, and if you don't take your time, and you don't really get to know them, and they don't really get to know you, and you don't really get to go through life's things without that, like, okay, we talked, we hit it off, we're committed, this is what we're doing. Because not everybody can operate on that promise in that moment of their life, because of course everything like feels great, and but then things come up and maybe they don't have the tools to be ready. I know I definitely didn't. I didn't have the capacity to walk away until, things got really hard, or not that they got hard, until things got really volatile, or they just was like a heartbreak on top of a heartbreak on top of a heartbreak. You know what I mean? And it's just like, okay, this can't continue. And I would then, situation where it would either end or I would leave, So for anyone who, lives with addiction, whether you're active in it or not, I do highly suggest getting into a meeting, because the testimonies of other people's, you know what I'm saying, their mess has been so much my message, and their testimonies, like, that's why and I feel like that's probably why sometimes when I get a little bit too much in my head, I'm not going to enough meetings. And it's because like other people's message, like it's incredible how much it helps me look inward and continue the work on myself, because I can identify myself in so many of these stories, and it helps give me perspective. But I really needed that meeting tonight, so I do highly suggest, like, you know what I mean, like, be open-minded, be willing. It doesn't cost anything, and I always get something out of every meeting. I really do, and it helps. It helps me continue the work inward, because that's and that's what also I like about the balance of Celebrate Recovery, because I don't identify as a problem. You know what I'm saying? But I did live with hurts and habits and hangups, and I wasn't able to heal from them, but I'm not a bad person. I have most definitely engaged in unhealthy behaviors and unhealthy relationships, and I most definitely have not been my best, and I have not done my best at times, and I most definitely, sure as hell tried, and was working towards doing my best. But that inevitable feeling of loneliness, just like heartbreak, you know, it really was something that most definitely had me re-engage in addiction, was just like hanging by a thread and being alone to carry, you know what I'm saying? Because I started isolating. Once stuff got hard, I started isolating, and then I would start looking outward in hopes that a man would comfort my pain and meet me where I'm at and just make me complete. And that is a lot to put on a human being, especially in an unhealthy place. I'm not necessarily going to find a healthy partner. I'm also don't know how to look for a healthy partner, because there's, you know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't. But yeah, I really needed that meeting. And for anybody, I really suggest, like, you don't have to label yourself an addict, but go into the rooms, get into some cognitive behavioral therapy. If you believe in God, get into Celebrate Recovery. The way there's a higher power, you gotta, surrender. That was another thing that I had to learn, that there are still things I need to surrender to, because there's this whole plan I have in my head of like jumping right back into the game and jumping right back. And I had to learn that surrender. Like, I have got to have manageable tasks and manageable activities until I get to where I can in a healthy way, manage higher responsibility, higher priorities, because you know, that's just the way it is, to prevent me from burning out. Like, I have to have a healthier system. I have to have a healthy community. And that's one thing he said too. He's like, just because he's like, if a kid up and leaves you, does that mean you're not a parent? No, it doesn't mean you're not a parent. And so that's also something that's really hard, is like, especially when you're in a situation like where moms are with their kids and you're bonding with their kids, and you have, all this time with other people's children, and you're like, man, dude, I wish like my kids were here, and I wish like I had my. And that's just because God's work is the best work, and I surrender. I gotta keep remember to surrender it to God and just give it to God. Let go and let God. So I'd say, Lord 57, be safe and be kind.